Hey, welcome back to the Springs Radio Real Estate Show. Yes, you got it. I am Cheryl Garlock with Colorado Front Range Properties. We have such a guest on this show, don't we, Andy?
We do. We have a great time.
We do. Hey, this is my guest, Andy Shinn with AY Realty, and I want to welcome him to the show again. It's always a pleasure to have you here. You always talk such great information about property management and what people need to be aware of. And you know, we're really in a height of a market time right now where a lot of people are renting their homes rather than selling them. Is that what you're finding?
Yeah, absolutely. And for a few years it's been like that. But I'll tell you, over a few years, a lot of people have learned lessons about what works and what doesn't work. And this is my favorite topic to talk about, so I'm glad you have me on the show.
Oh, well, you are always welcome there. And you know, one of the reasons I really like Andy is because this is an area where this is what he personally specializes in. He specializes in not being the big giant apartment complex property manager there. He specializes in working with individuals on their core needs and their core desires to go ahead and get their single family homes, townhomes, and condos rented. Isn't that about right?
That's right. Almost everything we manage is a single family home, townhome, or condo, and almost everything has a one person who has one investment. And that's, you know, so it's one customer at a time, very personalized service.
Oh, this is really great. It is a very personalized service, and people are looking for that personal attention. At least they certainly ought to be there, because it's not a run-of-the-mill operation.
Right.
And you don't want to be treated like that. It's just a run-of-the-mill, because this is an asset that is very, very important to you as an owner of that property, and you're looking to get a return on it, and you're also looking to get it back into an appropriate condition, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and you get treated like an investment. And you mentioned some terms, asset and return on investment. And if you can look at your house in those terms, you can put together a plan on how to best manage it, and we can help you with that.
Absolutely. Well, let's first of all talk about, you just told me too right before the show that you've got a new one that's coming up here that's for rent, that's a high-end one, like $3,500. I mean, some people think that that's just like, what, $3,500 for rent? It does happen.
It's amazing. We've rented a couple in excess of that this summer, and there's certainly a lot of rentals in the 2,000 plus range. This new one is a 5,000 square foot on one level up in Monument, and it's just a fantastic home. So.
Oh, and that's great to have that all on one level there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's true there. Well, let's talk a little bit about, you know, how far in advance should somebody put their home on the rental market? Now, how much, especially let's say like something like this is, and it must gauge differently for a price of say $3,500. How much time do you think you need to market something like that?
Yeah, it does matter what kind of home you're renting. But I'll tell you, I tell everybody, market as early as you can, because there's no harm in doing that. The fact is, the rental market picks up inside of about 3 weeks to availability. That's when most prospective renters really start to get serious about their search. So don't be discouraged if you put it on a few months in advance and you still don't have somebody, because it's going to pick up. But if you do put it on a few months in advance, you've got the opportunity to get that person who's looking early. And those tenants, by the way, who are looking early tend to be detail-oriented. They tend to be very good tenants. So earlier the better.
Oh, yeah, that's great there. I mean, I can't tell you, I sometimes get these calls when we have these smaller apartments here ourselves there, and I'll get these calls, well, I need it in 2 days. I need it in 2 days. I'm going, what happened to the planning? You know, I just don't understand. I just drifted into town. I need it in 2 days.
You'd be very surprised how many people, especially military folks, and I don't blame them, because maybe they don't have that house hunting search and they don't want to get tied into a scam, so they wait till they get to town, they grab a hotel or temporary housing, and the first place they find, they're ready to move in short order.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't want to stay in that hotel very long, because that is a really expensive rate.
That's right.
So for properties that are, say, like in the higher rental range, say that 3,000 plus, okay, do they take a little longer to rent, you think?
They do, because there's a smaller pool of potential candidates. And look, this if we were up in Denver, there's a big market for $3,500 rentals. In the Springs, it's a little bit more hit or miss, so it does potentially take longer, but there's also not as many of those types of homes on the market, so you can find the right candidate and get somebody good in there.
So what are some of the key problems on homes that are like not renting right now? When it's like for sales, you know, when you have homes that are for sale and they go to what we call an expired listing status, they don't sell. What are some of the reasons homes are not renting?
Well, the market's good right now, but there certainly are homes sitting on the market, and we're probably not as tight as we were in maybe May or June right now, but it's still a good market. But think about condition. What does your home look like when you show it? Is it in showing condition? If you're showing it with a tenant who's in there right now, how are you working with them to make sure that the home's in showing condition, that the dog's in the backyard, or whatever needs to happen for that home to really to be showable and rentable to prospective tenant. So those types of things are important. The other is a lot of folks, especially folks renting on their own, they don't necessarily realize they put a Craigslist ad on, then they go to work all day, and tenants don't leave messages. You've really got to have full-time availability waiting for those prospective tenants to call you.
Oh, yeah, because you know what? They want to see it right now.
That's right.
I mean, that's really what it is they really want to see it right now. They have an urgency issue that needs to be addressed and met.
They're also not buying the house, so they're not quite as tied into it. So they're looking at 5 or 6 homes on Craigslist that are all about the same in their mind.
Yeah.
If you don't answer, they call the next one.
Yeah, they do. They just, because they know that it's a temporary. They look at it as temporary. Even though it's a year, let's say it's a year, whatever it is, it's temporary. Are most of the lease terms nowadays here in the market pretty much 1 year?
1 year, but it's amazing how many folks are looking for 2 and 3 year leases, how many tenants. And that's because the rates have been going up. Rent rates in Colorado Springs have been going up consistently the last several years, about 4%. So if you're a tenant and you can lock in a 3-year lease, that's something you want to do. So sometimes that's a win-win for the owner and the tenant.
What would you say is the best way for a tenant or an owner to document the condition of the home? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I'll tell you. Number one is kind of old school, but it's the written checklist, going room to room and checking off what's wrong with it, writing down notes. There's a chip in the vinyl in the kitchen, and then having the tenant sign off. There's a lot of new things that are happening, and one thing we're doing is video walkthroughs, and that's great. But don't forget the written documentation, because there's nothing more compelling than somebody's signature that I was in the kitchen, everything looked great, and now when they moved out, that broken cabinet door, it wasn't like that, and you got their signature to say so.
Yeah, and video and pictures are great, but when you're talking about especially a sizable house, I mean, even in a small apartment, I tell you the truth, that's a lot of darn pictures.
Well, if you've got a chunk out of a baseboard, or you get a chip in a counter, and you're going through pictures 2 years later hoping that you have a pre-picture that covers that exact area, that's hard.
That is hard. That's a tough one there.
And video, I'll tell you, you still frame video, there's no zooming in, there's no resolution there.
No, there isn't. So that written checklist, as you say, is really, really, really important. Now let's talk about pets, because I get the phone call. Oh, it's a really good cat, and it never comes in. And I'm going, really? Yeah, is it a feral cat or what? Anyway, I'm being facetious here, okay? But, you get the calls about pets, and pets can do some serious damage.
Well, you want to have an extra deposit if you're going to allow pets, and you want to cover what the terms are in the lease. So if you're allowing a pet, document exactly what that is. I'm allowing one yellow Labrador at the move-in, and they can't add pets as the lease term goes on. Make sure that's in the lease, because if it's not, you're not going to have any rights if they end up adding another animal.
Mm-hmm. Same probably true for smoking. What do you think about smoking, real quick?
Make sure it's in the lease. You can always deduct for damages at the end of the lease, but you don't have any recourse during the lease to stop somebody from smoking unless it says so in the lease.
Wow. Hey, you know what? We have got a lot more to share with you on the Springs Radio Real Estate Show. Get your pen and paper ready, because we've got Property Showcase. We've got a couple of great houses to tune you on to. So stay tuned for more from the Springs Radio Real Estate Show.